Welcome back. The midweek strategists are here to scope the second half challenges of a campaign, which could range between pushing the emergency reset button to protecting the lead from inside a cocoon. Who knows? Let's find out. Monty Solberg is a former Harper cabinet minister. He's in Calgary. Sally Hauser worked for NDP leaders provincially and federally and joins us from Montreal. Here in the studio with me, Sarah Bain, a former Liberal insider. Welcome to you all. Second half strategy. Let's talk about this, Monty. I don't know about you. I think the Conservative campaign looks a little rocky. Maybe you think it's smooth sailing. How do you change the campaign in the second half, or don't you need to?
Well, I think you keep talking about jobs in the economy. That was the Prime Minister's announcement again today, where he talked about cutting payroll taxes by 20%, and you focus on what the other guys are doing wrong. Of course, Justin Trudeau wants to run big deficits, substantial deficits. He also wants to hike taxes, and he's attacking small businesses, saying, you know, they're running tax scams. So I think that's what you need to do, stay on that stuff. And of course, Tom Mulcair needs to get specific on how he's going to pay for all these promises. That's what the Prime Minister is going to go after, and I think that's what Canadians care about: jobs, the economy, debts and deficit.
Well, I don't know about that, Monty. I want to push you a little bit on that one. You have to be an ostrich with your head in the sand not to see a lot of trouble around you that doesn't deal with those messages. How do you get your message back on track? Because there are messages coming at you that Stephen Harper doesn't seem to want to talk about, yet the public does, like refugees.
Well, he is talking about them. I think the government is, you know, they've had a lot of people up talking about those issues. And to the degree that they want to talk about them, the record of the government is actually very good. 22,000 Iraqi refugees into Canada, 2,500 Syrians, and commitment to bring another almost 20,000 Syrians into the country. Record amounts going into settlement, record amounts going into support for refugees in some of these countries. So, you know, the government is doing a good job on this, but it's true that that message hasn't necessarily gotten through, and there's no question other people want to bring in more in some cases, but remember that we have to screen these people. There are health checks that need to be done. All of that takes time and money, and it's complicated.
Monty, I got to tell you, man, there's not a person in the know that seems to agree with your assessment of the situation right now, but I don't want to belabor the point. I want to go to you, Sally. What do you tell your leader to do? He's leading in the polls. Does he just play it safe and try and fudge the numbers as best he can?
Well, first, it's funny to be talking about this as halfway through the campaign, where I think we're actually even still a day away of what would be a normal campaign length. And allow me a little bit of nostalgia for a moment, but I remember kind of being this far out from Election Day at about around 13–15% in the polls back in 2011. So, obviously where the NDP is placed right now is encouraging. I think what we have to remember is the debates coming up. And the debates mean a lot of talking about policy, and I think that's when we're really going to see the demonstration of Mr. Mulcair's leadership and of his experience. He's been very clear that he is going after Stephen Harper's job. He wants to replace Stephen Harper and be that change, and also to demonstrate to Canadians that he is the significantly better choice to do that than Justin Trudeau.
All right. In other words, play it safe. All right, Sarah, what's your guy got to do? Justin Trudeau.
Keep
sort
doing
of in the middle.
doing.
Keep doing what he's doing.
The whole team. We're doing well, and that kind of thing reflects a lot in a war room. The staff, the morale is really high, and that's great. But when you're at a point like this where things are going very well, they can turn around incredibly quickly. Right. So I would say that number one right now for the halfway through, the number one thing for people to remember is discipline. And in the case of Mr. Harper and his camp and his war room, they're a team who's usually incredibly disciplined, but they cannot control the message track right now. And I'm going back to the point that you were making about the message track. Until they address the refugee crisis that they have been unable to address, and they've been hoping that it simply will go away. Hope is not a campaign strategy. Addressing it and doing the right thing is a campaign strategy.
The audacity of hope was Obama's mantra all the way into the White House. So there you go.
But that's not a campaign strategy. That's not an organization strategy.
There's a book. All right. Monty, I got to go back to you. Stephen Harper, do you think he can stay on this refugee policy track, or is he going to have to soften or wiggle around it somehow?
Let's get away from message tracks. Let's actually talk about the issue. I mean, there's no question that the government has been working on this, not for a couple of months, but for a couple of years now. They've been bringing in refugees. I think the more the government talks about it, the more clear that policy becomes. And I think people do go, okay, it's not just about announcing a big number and bringing people in. It's very complicated. One of the things we have to think about, and I know a bit about this, Dawn, as a former immigration minister, is the degree to which we can work with countries in the region to be somewhat of a solution to these things, because it's not, you know, when you have 3 million people displaced, you can't just parcel them around to various countries around the world. The biggest number of people will be helped through solutions in the region. That's what the government needs to talk about, along with the fact that they're one of the biggest donors, along with the fact that we're one of the biggest recipients of refugees over the last couple of years, and actually over the last 10 years.
All right, Sally, I want to get to you because your guy's promising a big increase in the refugee allocation. We just heard from a couple guests that that's a very problematic situation. There's bureaucratic hurdles to jump and security clearances to obtain. Is anyone being realistic about what we can do as a country to deal with this crisis?
I think it is, and what is required right now is not politics, but leadership and action. I understand that Mr. Mulcair reached out to Prime Minister Harper, to Stephen Harper today. I'm not sure if they were able to speak, but what Mr. Mulcair is saying is that yes, we need to increase the number, but even as Monty said, although I disagree with him on a lot of his numbers there, it's not just about numbers. It's about developing an infrastructure, and what that takes is leadership and resources in order to be able to get more people to safety more quickly. You need a coordinator who's going to be able to oversee this, and you need people on the ground. You need Canadian immigration officials on the ground who are able to assess the situation and process this more quickly. But really, it's time for action. The sooner the better.
So, Sarah, your guy comes along and says, I'll take your 10,000 and raise another 15,000. Are we playing politics with numbers here? Well,
sure, you know, Monty has been reading lines, giving us what the Conservative Party is saying, and I think that those are vital in the situation for us to talk about those things. But most importantly right now is that Canadians are showing leadership on this. Last week, the #1 issue...
They are showing leadership, or they
absolutely,
should be?
They have been. Canadians, the #1 Google search, immigration-related Google search last week was, the search word was, how can I, as an individual, how can I sponsor a refugee? Canadians want
to, but they can't
some
get them.
action on this,
right.
But they need to know how to do it. They want to know how to do it, and it's not in us. It's not like us to say that when we win, we'll bring in more refugees. That's not who we are. We want to show leadership now. We cannot wait a month in order to show leadership in this file.
Good point. All right, sorry we're short this week. We'll make up for it next week. Thank you all. See you next Wednesday.